Welcome into another edition of Talkin Ducks. Oregon narrowly escapes Idaho for this upcoming week. They'll play the best team in Idaho. That'll be Boise State coming into town. Lots of questions about the Oregon offense. We did see Dillon Gabriel. He looked rather impressive, but still a head scratcher in Eugene for the opening game. And to get things started, we've got Anthony Newman, Aaron Fentress, and Joey Harrington. And Joey, I gotta ask you, how was the viewing experience for you? I know you got a very comfortable couch, like an 82-inch plasma or LCD or whatever it is nowadays. How was it for you, my friend, being able to sit back and relax in the comfort of your own home and watch this game on TV?
Well, it actually, I got a very nice documentary about the campus and the history of the university. I really didn't want to watch the game anyway. How are you going to black out the local, I don't even, and everybody's gonna say, well, you should have known that because it was talked about for weeks in advance. What do you expect? I'm a television media personality, I'm involved in this stuff, I actually have any sort of knowledge about what's going on? No, I'm a soccer dad, I'm a taxi. I'm a shuttle the kids back and forth, right? I wake up, I turn the keys on, we take the car to school, I come back, I do things for the foundation, we get to Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all I want to do is watch the game. And so I turn the game on, and what's there? Nothing, except a message that says, hey, Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA, you don't get to watch the game. So what did I do? I had to rely on Aaron Fentress. Oh. Anytime you have to rely on Aaron Fentress for information, you're in trouble.
Good text updates? Come on.
I got my text updates with significant bias. It's like I was getting my updates from the Oregon State News Channel, right?
Oh, wow, really?
It was like a beautiful completion by Dillon Gabriel, and then all I get was some guy in green got lucky and completed a pass. It was horrible. Horrible.
Well, that's the last time I give you my free services there, Joey.
So Joey's viewing experience was horrible, Aaron. What about the actual game itself? Because Oregon was a 49.5-point favorite, I believe, coming into this one. And if you turned into this game late into the fourth quarter because somehow you didn't hear about the game not being on TV and you're scrambling to your local establishment to watch it, Joey, you see it's a 3-point game in the fourth quarter, Aaron.
I can't just pick up and leave and go down to Spirit of 77. I'm sorry, Jordan. I can't do that. Some of us rely on turning the television on and being able to watch the game, okay? Some of us still live in the the 2010s, okay? I still live there. I'm sorry. I can't do it.
It's all good. But Aaron, not what anybody was expecting with this game. Obviously, we saw it on Dan Lanning's face afterwards. What had happened is what I would ask you, basically, with this performance from Oregon.
So it was perplexing. It was very unusual to watch something like that go down between Oregon and a Big Sky team or any mid-major or lower tier FBS program or what have you. But they racked up 500 yards. They moved the ball up and down the field. The number one problem was lack of ability to close out some drives with touchdowns. And the biggest thing that was missing were big plays. They didn't have explosion plays anywhere. Now I'm gonna give you a quick stat here. So of their 4 scoring drives, 3 touchdowns and a field goal, took them 43 plays. So that's 11 plays per drive almost. They had other drives of 9 missed field goals, 9 fumbles, 7 and downs. They were out. Against Portland State last year, and granted maybe Portland State isn't as good as Idaho, but regardless, they're both Big Sky teams. The Ducks had 5 scoring drives. They had more than that. They won 81 or whatever, but 5 of their scoring drives only took 21 plays. So that's 4 plays a drive, and they covered 75, 60, 83, 75, and 70 yards. So they were boom, 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 touchdown. When you take longer to drive down the field, you open yourself up for more mistakes. So while Gabriel was extremely efficient and threw for a lot of yards, couple touchdowns, no picks, they were unable to generate big plays on offense. I think their longest rush, was 24 or something like that, and their longest pass was right around 20. Meanwhile, around the country, Ohio State, Alabama, other national contenders were rattling off these big, giant plays against inferior opponents. So on one hand, it was just one of those days, right? There's no way Oregon's going to be bad on offense and not put up big points. They might drop 50 this week. On the other hand, when you look at how they looked and the inability to create big plays against an Idaho, it makes them appear vulnerable against better teams that are going to shut them down more. And if you can't generate bigger plays, you're going to have trouble scoring. So that's the only thing I would say about it.
Yeah, Anthony, what did you think about this one? I thought just because Oregon joined the Big Ten, all of a sudden their scoring average has to go down 14 points per game automatically. But there was something going on here. I think to Aaron's point, these drives were taking so long and a lot more mistakes than you anticipated.
Well, I'm going to look at the glass half full, okay? I'm not going to be like Aaron.
Surprise.
Okay, so, yeah, you wanted that excitement. Excuse me. You wanted some big plays, but, it's hard to have a 12-play drive and score. I mean, that's really hard to do. And as a defense, you want teams to do that. But as an offense, if you can do that, that's going to help you down the road. If you need to do that, you need to keep the ball and control the clock. So that's what Oregon did. Yeah, Oregon didn't put it in the end zone. And I remember I had a defensive coordinator who used to tell us, yards don't beat you, points do. So they can get all kinds of yards, but if they get no points, they don't win. That almost happened with Oregon. They got a lot of yards, but they didn't get a whole lot of points. Now let's give some credit, Aaron, to Idaho's defense. They were playing well. Here's what they had. We call it RP. Okay, it's relentless pursuit to the football. They had all 11 dudes running to the football. They didn't care.
That's because none of them were blocked.
Well, yeah. Okay, I'm done.
Jordan, did he just shut Anthony
Yeah, real quick,
up?
Joey.
Like, was that like the moment where it's been a decade, and I don't know that anything Aaron has said has actually gotten Anthony to pause and say, "Ooh, yeah, maybe."
Wave the white flag.
Like that might have been it.
It takes a decade.
We'll talk later.
All right, but
Hey,
Joey,
Jordan,
yes.
Ask me what I thought of the game.
What'd you think of the game, Joey?
I don't know. I didn't see it.
All right, well, so much more to get to in this one. When we come back, we'll hear some post-game sound from Dan Lanning. We'll also take a closer look at this Oregon defense and the offensive line. What's the major area of concern after this first game? Don't go anywhere. We're just getting started on Talkin Ducks.
Coach, I'm just wondering, what did you tell the team in the locker room after the win?
Well, that's for the team. That's for the team in the locker room. If we wanted you guys there, we would have everybody else in there.
Front left, Eric. How about just what the mood is generally amongst those guys?
There's areas for improvement for us right now. You celebrate wins in our program when that happens, but there's some areas for improvement.
Well, that was the post-game sound nibble because it was so short from Dan Lanning. Clearly not very happy with that performance there, Aaron. And when you look at kind of the biggest issue with this Oregon team after that performance against Idaho, you called out already the lack of big explosion plays, but there are also some issues with the offensive line, couldn't really establish much of a run game. What would you think is the top two issues for Oregon that they need to fix this upcoming week when you look at the game film?
Well, first of all, when a coach is upset when he takes a cheap shot at the media. We don't want to be in your locker room, Dan. We're just asking you a question. And normally a coach would answer that question and say what they told their team to a certain extent. But his short answer and a little dig at the media was a clear sign that dude was PO'd. And I don't blame him because he knows his team underachieved. As far as what I want to see this week against Boise, the explosion plays are important. But Oregon has, since they went to the spread pretty much, they have been a dominant run team, right? So I'm looking at their rushing numbers, 137 gained, and after the losses, 107 net. That is frightening because against Idaho, with those big beasts along the offensive line and with the backs you have and when you're spreading people out, you have the threat of passing, 250 should come easily. Like that should be a gimme. We're talking rushing in the 300 range against a team like Idaho should be the norm. So we need to see a much better running game this week because everything's going to play off of that. If you go back and give Bo Nix a team where you can't run the football, all of his passing numbers are going to come down in terms of efficiency because he's not going to be able to lean on 2nd and 1, 2nd and 2, 3rd and 1, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the number one thing I want to see. I think if you do that, the explosion plays will come.
Anthony, what about the defense? Because it was a game where obviously the offense wasn't helping out the defense too much. What do you take away from the fact that it was still a one-possession game in the fourth quarter?
Well, the Oregon defense, they did what they're supposed to do. They had, 3 sacks, two interceptions. I think Idaho had 49 yards rushing, but that's what they're supposed to do. I mean, that's given. yeah, they were out there quite a bit. At the same time, I think Aaron said it. You want to see some young guys get in there. I mean, there was a lot of new faces in the secondary, Brandon Johnson and guys like that, Kobe Savage. But you want to see some other guys get in there and get some work in, with a game like this. But it didn't happen because I think they were struggling. Coaches maybe getting a little nervous, going, hey, we got to keep our starters in. But also I'll look at, okay, maybe they want them to play. Maybe there's a lot of new faces. Okay, you need to get some reps. Go ahead and let's get reps in this game, even though, we're not up by 50, but it just, there was something missing. Here's what I thought. Okay, Joey, maybe you can you can chime in. I know training camp was no joke for them. Training camp was hard, very physical, and they wanted training camp to be that way. And sometimes when you have that hard training camp and you go into that first game, you might be a little tired. Yeah, it was hot, but it's hot for both teams. I understand that. But maybe they're a little tired. Now, again, no excuses. You need to do what you need to do against Idaho. And that didn't happen.
First of all, you missed your calling. You should be in politics. You just delivered more spins than a Michael Jackson concert. Okay, so here's my biggest thing with the defense.
What?
More spins than a Michael Jackson concert. Anyway, so listen, you're not wrong, but my alarming thing would be the game is tight. It's the fourth quarter. It's 17-7, and you let Idaho march 75 yards and score on you to make it 17-14. Now you're within a fumbled kickoff return, a fumble interception, something. All of a sudden, boom, you're losing to Idaho. So that's the only thing I would say about the defense, that when it mattered most, they gave up a touchdown drive to Idaho in the fourth quarter. That is a little alarming.
It's not alarming to me at all. Not even close.
That's fair.
Not even thinking about it.
That's fair.
Aaron. Not even thinking about it. I don't get alarmed with this.
Yeah, you think about
it. It's too early in the season to be alarmed with this. Come on, you tripping.
Joey?
Well, Joey, it's week one, and you've been a part of several week one teams, and obviously, like we said before, you weren't able to watch this game. But when you hear about some of these numbers, and when you look at the issues that your teams maybe had week one, what would be a logical explanation for why some of these mental mistakes happened against a team that you feel like you should dominate? I mean, how did you ponder and reflect on this one?
Okay, well, I didn't get to watch it live. I have seen them play. I don't know that there's another team in the country that gave up 60% of their sack total from last year in one game. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
Right? Oregon,
yeah.
Our numbers guy, Fentress, gave up 5 sacks to Bo last year. Was it like 2 the year before? They gave up 3 sacks in this game. And while that's not alarming for most teams, when offensive line is your issue, or a position group that needed to be addressed, you've lost the best center in the country, your returning starter is injured, that is somewhat, and consequently gave up 3 sacks and didn't rush the football very well inside the tackles. I'm not going to say I'm alarmed, because I'm not. I've been on plenty of football teams that, like we've talked about before, we always stunk in the non-league games. I think we had like a 4-point game to Fresno, and we had a close one against Utah State, and I never played well in those opening games, but it's something that needs to be addressed. It does. The offensive line will dictate. They have enough talent to have explosive plays at running back. They have enough talent to have explosive plays at wide receiver. The defense, had Oregon put up 58 and the final score was 58-14, then we wouldn't be having a conversation about the defense at all. But the fact that Oregon allowed Idaho to be in that position of marching down the field to get a late touchdown ignited the conversation. This, for me, all starts around the offensive line. And Anthony, you've talked for years, playing in the trenches, playing in up front, that's an attitude. That's a who wants it more. That's a, bring your lunch pail. Whatever colloquialism you want to throw in there. That's an attitude deal. So it's a matter of healthy bodies, finding a group that's gelled the way that, the offensive line has the last 2 years, and then deciding that you want to show up and push somebody around. So, I'm not alarmed, but I want to see better next week.
Just real
And
quick,
Aaron,
Joey
you're-
dominated Idaho. It was 42-13. Joey threw 4 touchdowns. Just to throw that out there.
But Aaron, Aaron, I understand what you're talking about and Joey said it. He's not alarmed, but there's some things that they need to work on. And yes, it starts with the offensive line. I didn't see that nastiness at the offensive line. I didn't see them drive anybody back off the line of scrimmage. That was a concern because you're going into the Big Ten. It's all about the offensive line.
Exactly. You go to Wisconsin playing like that on the offensive line, you coming back with an L.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all you guys. There's some key points across the board, the lack of explosion plays, but I think, Joey, you hit on the head. You got to make sure this offensive line is shored up coming into the season because the conference that you're in now and the weather you're going to be playing in, you've got to be able to run the football. And the fact that they couldn't against Idaho, you're hoping this is just assignment football mistakes, getting all 5 guys on the same page. You've had some injuries. Look at the film, get chewed out a little bit this week and fix it. But this is going to be a real litmus test for them against Boise State coming up. And if you have the same issues in back-to-back weeks, then I think the concern really starts to raise for Oregon as they get set for conference play a few weeks later. Joey, real quick.
Just to be fair, there are 4 potential first-round draft picks on that Idaho defensive line. So, just throwing that out there.
All right.
Nobody's challenging
that. We come
that?
back plenty.
Nobody's challenging that at all. Like that just
No,
passed through. I
no, there's
completely
not.
made that
We
up.
know
Why?
that.
Because I didn't watch the game. I didn't get to see the game. I don't know.
Well, I know you didn't get a chance to
Idaho's
see it,
defensive
but I
line
can
looked
tell
like.
you,
I
there's
didn't
not
see
4
it.
first-round draft picks on Idaho as much as I want to give them credit for that game. So big issues for Oregon. All right, one issue that wasn't one for the Ducks when we come back, Dylan Gabriel, his performance, his debut. We'll chop it up when we come back on Talkin Ducks.
Yeah, not stats are one thing, but we're focused on winning, and a win's a win. We'll say that, but there's a lot we need to improve on.
What areas?
I think just finishing, not beating ourselves up. More explosive plays, so we're not in as many third downs, and just being efficient. I feel like we beat ourselves in a lot, and they did a great job as well. But it was just strenuous at times.
Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. As we just heard from Dylan Gabriel there, Aaron, obviously not too pleased with this team's performance, and you can look at the numbers that he was able to rack up, but still not being able to go out and dominate on offense like you can. You really can't feel good about those numbers. A lot of those passes were just short, little dump-off passes or shorter throws, no big explosion plays, but his debut for Oregon, and you got the first real sample size of Dylan Gabriel in a Ducks jersey in a real game. What was your takeaway after Duck fans have been essentially spoiled with Bo Nix the last couple of years?
I thought he played well. I mean, it's unfair without access to the All-22 to really, say how many plays he missed downfield. But he was super efficient, and they moved the ball. And they had some long drives where they got points. They had some long drives where they didn't come away with points. That wasn't all on him. When you don't have an explosive running game and you're only rushing for a net 100 yards, that puts a lot of pressure on the quarterback to make up for that. And I don't think they're necessarily built that way, especially when you lost one of the best quarterbacks in program history, one of the best receivers, and one of the best backs. As I said, Oregon's never won a conference title after losing those 3 starters. But I give him a solid B. I mean, it would have been an A had we seen a couple more downfield passes, but he definitely seemed like a guy completely controlled the situation, where he wanted to go, what he wanted to do, like you would expect from a sixth-year senior.
Hold on, I'm just gonna only interject to ask a question about this. How much did him hitting his hand on the helmet affect his? I see 41 for 49, right? You see all those short passes, and yeah, you have to replace the running game by sometimes that becomes the running game, but I don't know, like. Being there, watching it, did it look like he was favoring the short ball because he couldn't quite make the long ball?
I couldn't see anything from it, to be honest.
I
was nervous at first because I didn't see him. I couldn't find him. I thought he went in, but then next thing you know, he was back out on the field. And I didn't see any kind of wrap I didn't see anything.
Well, famously, Vernon Adams broke a finger and could not throw the ball downfield with any velocity whatsoever. That led to them getting blasted by Utah early, and then he came out, and then he got his finger fixed and came back and lit up the Pac-12, right? So, I mean, that might have hindered him a little bit, but I didn't see anything that made it look like that was a problem, because with Vernon, it was obvious. He threw some passes that was like people were wondering, does this guy have any arm strength? And of course, we knew he did. I didn't feel that way with Dylan, and he didn't really make that excuse. So, I can't say either way.
Joey, I didn't see a lot of pass route combinations down the field. Everything was real short all the time.
Yeah, I didn't either because I got blacked out of the game.
But late in the game, that could have been because he wasn't feeling the ability to really sling it. So.
Yeah, and that's what I was asking. It was like, you can tell when a quarterback comes out, you watch him and it's just jumping off his hand. Like, I was curious to see if as the game progressed, after, him hitting his hand on the helmet, whether or not it's like, something's changed a little bit. Because that can shift your thinking down the field. Like, I don't know if I can get into that hole down the field. I'm going to check it down, right? Guy ends up 41 for 49 for 380 in a couple touchdowns, and we're giving him a B. Or somebody gave him a B. That's a heck of a B. Let's be honest here. Like that is if the offensive line can open up a few holes, you can get another few yards on the ground, you finish a couple drives, that type of quarterback play will win you a championship. Like, if I told the coach, hey, your guy's going to complete 82% of his passes for 350 and 2 touchdowns every game, would you take that? They would take it every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Like, that's exactly what you want them to do. And yeah, you need a couple more shots down the field, but that'll come.
And he said after the game,
and I get that, Joey, for sure. But Aaron, this was against Idaho. And so just to say, hey, I hope the offensive line can open up some holes, establish a running game, and then these guys get open against much better talent on the outside, that's a lot, especially as the competition starts to ramp up here in the next couple of weeks.
And that's the issue. So that's why when people say it was just one game, it was just a bad day, it was just this, it's just that, usually there's red flags when a team performs like that against Idaho, because they're going to face much better teams down the road, especially in this conference. And so, I can buy into it was just one game and they're going to fix it. Like, I can buy that because they have way too much talent on the roster, right? But at the same time, I'm going into the rest of the season always remembering that Idaho game until I see this team crank up some 280-yard days on the ground, 300 yards on the ground against maybe Boise or Oregon State and UCLA. They come out of that trio with 750 rushing. I feel better about it. If not, I'm worried because they play like that against conference teams. L's are going to come. Now, remember in 2021 when they beat Ohio State, right? Then they played Stony Brook, and they didn't look very good. I think it was 17-7 at halftime. Remember that? And after that game on this show, I was like, yeah, that's a red flag. But they had beaten Ohio State, so people looked past it. What happened? A couple weeks later, they lose to Stanford. A few weeks after that, they get blasted by Utah twice, right? So sometimes those red flags can rear their ugly head later in the season against better teams.
Yeah, either way, it feels like the raw tools and the understanding and the confidence are there for Dylan Mitchell, for Dylan Gabriel. Wish they had Dylan Mitchell back out there still. But I think at the end of the day, Joey, what you're saying is more of that support, which you feel like they can show against better teams. He certainly has enough in his toolkit to help lead this team to where they want to go to if the rest of the cast can step up.
Yeah, we've talked about this plenty of times. I remember walking up the tunnel at halftime. I think it was against Utah, and this was pre Pac-12 Utah and Bilotti. I think we're down 3 or up 3 at halftime when we should have been blowing them out. And he looked at me and said, "You don't have to wait until the fourth quarter to start playing well." Like, we had plenty of games where we stunk it up against lesser teams, and then what happened? We go out and win a couple Pac-10 championships. Like, I'm not throwing up warning signs just yet, but it is something that you have to address. And I feel good having a quarterback who's in his 17th year, who completed 80% of his passes for, no interceptions. Like, if I'm going to build something off of that, I feel pretty good going forward.
Jordan,
all right,
real quick.
Don't go anywhere. Yes, real quick, Anthony.
Real quick. The running game. Let's talk about the running backs real quick, because I didn't see any yards after contact. And that's what bothered me a little bit. They got tripped up a lot. It was like, for that explosion play, we were looking for the explosion plays from the running back. And there was, it was a spot where, hey, there was a hole, there he goes, and then one guy tackles him. So I wasn't used to that. And so that's obviously will get better down the road. But those two running backs, James and Noah Whittington, they're good. But yards after contact, that's what you need to help the offensive linemen.
All right, well, when we come back, we'll hear from Dan Rubenstein. He'll join us for the first time this season. We'll get his thoughts and also a look at the national picture. Plenty more Talkin Ducks when we come back. Welcome back to Talkin Ducks, and for the first time this season, we welcome in our good friend Dan Rubenstein from the Solid Verbal Podcast. And Dan, two-part question here for you, which I know goes against all the rules of journalism school. Your thoughts on Oregon's subpar performance against Idaho, and then where do the Ducks fit into the Big Ten now that we've had a chance to kind of see them and you see the outlook for this year?
So first of all, I have a general rule not to overreact in a good or bad way to week one. It's the first time these guys are seeing live action. It's the first time the coaches have an opportunity to see their guys, see their scheme, see the new guys, see the veterans in live action. And while Idaho is sort of a feisty FCS school, you know, obviously Oregon should be disappointed with the way that offense performed against the Vandals. Again, all due respect. But look, I saw what everybody else saw, which was an out of sync, out of sort, unhealthy offensive line. And we'll see what happens when they get healthier. We'll see what happens when, you know, if Charlie Pickers can continue to be the center. You could see that he was struggling to make some reads and pointing out different things that the defensive front was going to do. There were missed assignments. There were penalties. That's what week one is for. That's why I guess you play Idaho and not Georgia in week one, to work out kinks and see where you can get better without being overwhelmed. So I believe in Will Stein. I believe in Alik Terry. I believe in Dan Lanning and their ability to figure things out. And, you know, that's probably why we saw Dylan Gabriel throw a lot of short balls, that he was feeling the pressure or felt like there might be pressure, even if there wasn't, because the line was out of sorts. I expect more downfield success. I expect more downfield attempts. I expect, you know, more Terrence Ferguson up the field, more Evan Stewart up the field, working in the young receivers more. And, you know, even against this Boise State defense, with as well as they ran the ball, this defense has holes. This passing game for Boise State isn't great, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But as for where they fit in the Big Ten after week one, I think it's unchanged, right? If I'm not going to overreact, I have to stand by that statement, and I'm going to say, as the offensive line gets healthier, as they get more reps together, because as we know, this is a single unit, right? They have to play together. They have to move as one. And so when they figure that out, as they get healthier, as they figure out rotations, they're going to improve. The run game's going to improve. Dylan Gabriel is going to have more time. So unchanged to me.
All right, and then you've got Boise State coming into town now. Ashton Jeanty, one of the best running backs in the country. But what do we expect to see from Boise State, and what's going to be the biggest challenge for Oregon in this one?
Well, they saw the blueprint from last week that there is an opportunity to confuse and mask certain things with their pass rush, with their defensive front, and really test what Oregon is and can be up front along the offensive line. So I think we're going to see that on defense, although this is, to me, not an incredible Boise State defense coming in from last year. We'll see what is and what isn't from their week one win against Georgia Southern. But no, I think they're going to test the offensive line in that way. They're going to run straight at Oregon. They know their strength. Oregon knows their strength. I think they're going to try and be as creative as humanly possible. Dirk Cutter calling that offense for the Broncos in finding ways to get Ashton Jeanty the ball. But look, if Oregon is able to improve like I think they should be able to do, like we saw, for instance, a couple years ago after that Georgia loss when they played BYU, different team, bounced back in a big way. I think the final score there was 35-3. So I think what Dan Lanning has been preaching is correct, which is Oregon's opponent is Oregon. If Oregon plays to their standard, if Dylan Gabriel feels comfortable going downfield, they should be able to score. They should be able to cleanly beat this Boise State team, not unlike what Washington did to them last season.
All right, Dan. Well, hey, great to see your face as always. I know you're busier than I'll get up this season, so thanks again for joining us. Can't wait to see you each week.
Oh, my pleasure. Can't wait.
All right, don't go anywhere. When we come back on Talkin Ducks, we'll take a look at the national landscape. Do you feel just as high on the Ducks being national championship contenders after their week one stumble? We'll let you know when we come back on Talkin Ducks. All right, welcome back to Talkin Ducks. We just heard from Dan Rubenstein, and as we take a look at the national picture here, Aaron, everybody pretty much taking the field this first week. Really, the only major upset was Florida State losing to Georgia Tech a couple weeks ago. But Oregon, number 3 team in the nation. Some people had them picked as a national championship contender. You look at the fact that they struggled against Idaho. Georgia blast Clemson. Ohio State had no issues with Akron. A couple of other top 10 programs. Notre Dame looked well. Your thoughts on Oregon as a national contender? Is it too early to say, let's pump the brakes because it's only been one game? Or enough red flags for you to feel like, listen, this top 2 or top 3 in the Big Ten might not be a lock?
Yeah, never was a lock to me. I think they were in the mix, but lock would be too strong. I would say they had the worst performance of every team in the top 10, almost by far. I mean, a lot of teams, if they didn't have big blowout wins, it was because they were playing against other FCS programs, Power 5 type teams. I think the voters are going to look at this and what they were 3. I think they dropped to 8, 9, 10, somewhere in that realm, maybe further. It depends on how voters think. But they have a lot to prove now. I mean, here's the thing. All the hype about the transfers, all the hype about the money thrown around, all the hype about this being the best, like people have literally said this is the best roster Oregon's ever had, which is asinine, as we were just shown on Saturday. So they have a lot to live up to, and after week 1, it's a big dud. So now they have a lot to prove, but it makes the season more exciting for me because I was thinking, we got to get through non-conference to get to Ohio State before I care about what's going to happen. But right now, I'm looking at this Boise game, and we need to see a lot, and I think the voters are going to need to see a lot from them as well.
I am so tempted to just go off the rails and ask the question, what year had the best and most talented roster? If you guys want to think about that here for a second, we can hit up at the end. But, I mean, Joey, listen, it's week 1. It's only been one game. The struggles against Idaho. Any cracks in the foundation of Oregon being a team that can win the national title, or do we need a larger sample size?
Oh, sure there are. There's massive cracks because everybody knows that you crown a national champion after week 1. I mean,
like Colorado won it last year after week 1, right?
Yeah, you get one shot. You have one opportunity to win a national championship, and that occurs immediately after training camp. Forget the depth, forget late into November, forget all that other stuff that plays out after now. It's right now, and it's right now against a team that you really aren't excited to play. So, they're in a lot of trouble.
Anthony?
I love it. I feel the same way. Like I can't stand preseason rankings. They drive me crazy.
So dumb.
I mean, honestly. And then, you talk about a team, they're going to be so great. Yeah, they got a lot of dudes. But, have they won any football games? It's all about winning football games. And so when you judge them so harshly after this first game, oh, God, they're the worst thing since sliced bread. Okay, keep talking. keep talking, because the kids can play the game. They can play football. They have some dudes. Now, I don't know who said this is the best team ever. I don't know where that stuff comes
best
from.
Roster.
I don't know why people say that.
Most talent, best roster. And that's
where does it come from? Where? Who says that?
Recruiting,
some former Ducks have said it. I'm just saying that's the hype that's around this team.
Come on. Please.
I'm not gonna dime out anybody, but former Ducks have told me this is arguably the best roster they've ever had. Most talented.
We need names, Aaron. Come on.
But listen, that's based on all of the mindless hype around star rankings and transfer rankings and money being thrown around. And this guy's gonna be that and that and this. It's all nonsense until we see them play. And we saw them play, and they did not look like the greatest roster in the history of the last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, let alone history of the program.
Rankings, huh?
All right, well,
4-star,
yes, Joey,
3-star. Oh, those are correct.
I'm listening. I agree with you. I'm just saying.
Hold on. Okay, there's a difference, quickly before we go to break, there's a difference between most talented roster and best team.
Exactly.
Right? This is based on recruiting analysis and stars coming out of high school. This is the most talented roster that we have had at Oregon. And it doesn't necessarily equate to the best team. That's it. That's
100%.
All right, don't go anywhere. When we come back, we will take a look at Boise State, boasting arguably one of the best offensive players in the country, a true test for this Oregon defense, and it's just week 2. We'll give you our breakdown when we come back on Talkin Ducks. Time now for our road to victory, brought to you by Guarantee Chevrolet. That was head coach Dan Lanning, and really coming into this game against Boise State, this is when the season really begins, Anthony, because you can potentially write off Idaho as an FCS opponent. You're coming off a camp. You feel like you just have to show up. You can dominate. It's the first time that this many players have played together at Oregon, a lot of new faces. You finally have some game film to digest. You got game film on the other team. But Boise State, this is a big-time matchup. Oregon's never beaten Boise State, surprisingly. When you look at the way that Oregon's going to respond, how do you expect this team to just mentally come out of the tunnel here next week and prepare for this one and to show up on the field?
Well, first of all, Boise State's a good football program. They can play. They got a good running game. They will come to play. They got nothing to lose. But it's not about Boise State. It's about Oregon. It's about the next game. It's like in football, and Joey, you heard this all the time. Aaron, maybe you did. I'm not sure. You might have been on the sidelines. I'm not sure. But it's all about the next play. What happens the next play? You get beat. I get beat for, and the guy strolls into the end zone. Joey throws the pick, but you still have 60 more plays. Right now, Oregon has another game. They have to learn from their mistakes. Yeah, it wasn't what they wanted, but they have to move on. And they move on during practice. So this week of practice is really important. Get back at what you know you need to do, okay? And then everybody executes. You shouldn't have a problem. But there was something wrong the last game. There's no doubt. There was something missing. Some guys were hurt, so you're missing a couple of offensive linemen. But at the same time, that's no excuse because you got a lot of players. You got a lot of depth. Move on to the next game and see what happens.
Aaron, for Boise State, I remember last year I called Andy Avalos' last game for Boise State, and we had a chance to meet Spencer Danielson in our coaches meeting, and just the energy that he brought. And if everyone's not familiar with this story, he was the interim coach last year and basically was told you need to win out, which was 5 games. He won all 5, and I think at 31 years young or something crazy, he got the head coaching job. And so this is a Boise State team that has won 6 straight games going back to last year, boasting one of the best running backs in the nation. And typically for Oregon, the games that they get upset in, it's against teams that have great backs that can control the clock. So it seems like this is a big game and a huge area of concern for Oregon and a wonderful test to see how good is this team. Are those red flags really there from Idaho? You couldn't ask for a better matchup in week 2, it feels like.
All right, first off, Newman, when I shanked a punt, I knew I had to come back and make a better punt, all right, since you called me a punter last year. Anyway,
who cares what the question I asked?
So look, Boise can run the
You
football.
had to make that point, didn't you? You had that ready to go.
He was
going to make it
unsolicited attack.
heck or high water.
It was an unsolicited attack. Okay, so here's the thing. Yes, Boise can run the football. But when your defense is being paid $7 million, Boise State shouldn't be able to run it on you. Okay, the main thing I want to see offensively is them light up Boise State because Boise State's defense just got lit up by a kid named J.C. French from Georgia Southern who threw for 322, was a couple touchdowns, no picks. He threw passes. They had like 10 guys catch passes. So there's an opportunity there to light up Boise State. So I don't care how many yards they rush for or if they score a few touchdowns. That doesn't matter. Let's see the explosion plays. Let's see you go downfield. Let's see you take advantage of this pretty mediocre Boise State defense and get it done in the passing game. Otherwise, if you come out and you can't put up big points against this team, now the red flags become even more bountiful as you go into Oregon State.
Joey, how would you guys bounce back from a game typically? Let's say you had one of those that for whatever reason was a stinker. You know you can play a lot better. What are the things you noticed that helped you guys respond and play to the caliber that you're capable of playing?
You just tell yourself, don't do that anymore. I mean, it's.
Thanks, Coach.
I mean,
don't do that.
It's kind of that.
Hey guys, just be good.
Just
don't do that.
Just don't suck. I don't know. I understand the idea of intensity and practice, and trust me, Anthony as a coach, you're preaching it, and there is a certain level of focus, and you can't just be blowing things off. But at the same time, are they really gonna practice that much better this week than they did last week? I don't know. Sometimes you just have to tell yourself just stop being stupid. Just don't do that anymore. Don't suck. Just go be better. And and that requires maybe a little bit of an extra crank, but it's all up top, right? It's just the little details that like Anthony said. Maybe it's finishing a block all the way down to the ground. Maybe it's driving somebody a couple yards back instead of stopping right before the whistle. it's little detail stuff that kind of snowball, right? It's not like one like monumentous, like all of a sudden we're gonna be great and we're gonna flip a switch. Like you just kind of do a few more little things. Aaron, go.
Just think about this too, guys. You're talking about a roster where you're adding a bunch of guys from other places where they were good, right? And you're piecing them all together with some returners, obviously. You're paying guys a lot of money. The amount of inflated egos. I mean, I know Newman had a big giant ego back when he paid. Imagine if you gave him $700,000 on top of that and he's driving a Maserati around. Maserati, I don't know why I thought of that. But anyway, so when you're piecing together a bunch of all-stars who all think they're the man because you gave them a bunch of money, there's going to be a sense of expecting to just show up and just dominate whoever you're playing, especially Idaho. So maybe this gave them all a kick in the butt that just because you're being paid, just because you come with 4 or 5 stars next to your name, just because all these people wanted you, right, to transfer to their school and you went to Oregon, doesn't mean, like Joey said, you can develop into a good team. So hopefully they learned that lesson because that was a talented team, but one that did not look like it knew how to play well together as a team.
Anthony, Aaron just said that all the Oregon players are rich and spoiled.
What's that, Joey?
I'm just letting Anthony know that that Fentress just said all the Oregon football players are rich, spoiled little babies. I'm just that's just the headline. I don't know. I'm just letting you know.
Well, I'm just glad that we hit the psychology of the game. It only took us 6 segments to get there. So we'll wrap up shop when we come back. We'll give you our predictions. Oregon versus Boise State, Week 2. Talkin Ducks will return in just a moment.
Jordan, just don't suck.
Welcome back to Talkin Ducks. Time to close up shop here. Oregon, 18.5-point favorites over Boise State, over under 61.5 points. We're going to go around the horn, give me your score prediction, and then what you want to see from the Oregon Ducks. Aaron Fentress, get us started.
Last year against Colorado, Dan Lanning said that the Ducks were about substance, not clicks. The offseason and all the hype was all about clicks, and then they showed a lack of substance against Idaho. I think Dan Lanning is irritated to end all be all, and he is going to kick his team verbally in the pants this week, and they're going to come out and demonstrate more substance and win. I'm going to say it's going to be about 47-17.
Okay. Anthony.
Yeah, I think everybody needs to calm down a little bit. I think Oregon will get back to business. Aaron, you said it, Boise State, they don't have a defense. So, Dylan's going to light them up. The receivers, they're going to have some explosion plays. I think they beat Boise State by 35.
Joey.
In the words of the great American philosopher Taylor Swift, like Anthony just referenced, you need to calm down. Y'all need to calm down. It's going to be about 73 to, I'll give them 17, simply, maybe 14, because the Boise State's running back is so good. Like, he's really good. First back off the NFL board kind of good. So we'll call it 123 to 14.
Coming back to earth here. I think Oregon, the offense steps up a little bit. I don't think they get everything figured out in just 1 week, especially with the competition stepping up. I think Boise's going to control the ball a little bit more with Genty. I think it's going to be a little bit more narrower than what we're thinking. I've got 42-24 Ducks in this one. They still get the win. They look better, but still some things to clean up.
You're worse than Fentress,
don't forget, you can catch
Jordan.
Talkin Ducks every single week on Root Sports Northwest. You can catch us on YouTube as well, too. And please, for the love of everything, tweet Joey before the game, at least 2 nights before. He goes to bed early, and let him know where he can watch the game. He needs to be able to sit back and relax when he's taking breaks in between driving his kids to all of their soccer games. From all of us here, thanks again for joining us. We'll catch you next time on Talkin Ducks.
As long as it's not Big Ten Network, I know where to go.